CHIMAMANDA NGOZI ADICHIE. Or if that's actually how you pronounce it, that's how Wikipedia pronounced it. CHIMAMANDA NGOZI ADICHIE. Yeah, well, I'll take a little explanation of that soon. But for now, let's just get this started with right now. Here's a little bit messy, but I'm fine with that. CHIMAMANDA NGOZI ADICHIE. I'm just gonna call her Miss ADICHIE. Now, she was born on September 15th of 1977. And she was also born in Enugu, which is in Enugu State in Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the most well-known African countries for one reason. In reality, several reasons, but most people know it for one reason. Its neighbor. But other than that, let's keep going on. Regardless, here we have several things to really talk about. She was going ahead, and she was the fifth out of 6 children. Mainly because she was living in Nigeria, she was given an English name, and that is Grace. But this will become irrelevant soon enough. Regardless, apparently she was called Grace mainly because her mother was also called Grace, and with that on her with that, she was able to be named Grace, and this will become relevant later on. Her father apparently had a university degree and went to America after marrying her mother to go ahead and help them out in some places out. Like, you know, he worked at the universities in America and had 2 children, so technically 2 of her siblings are American citizens. Natural born American citizens, and thereby eligible to vote to run for the presidency. Later on, returning to Nigeria to going ahead and working at the University of Nigeria. Speaking of that University of Nigeria, mainly because there was a war going on in Nigeria by the time she was pretty much born and still in her childhood, the family was having the residency at the University of Nigeria, and they were apparently at the home of the former Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe lived and also possibly wrote some books. According to her, her childhood mostly consisted of reading English-only stories, like, you know, the British stories of white, blue-eyed, blonde boys having all these crazy adventures and things, and doing all these moral, rightful stuff. And later, it wasn't until later on that she actually started reading African literature, but because of this, she had some kind of a little bit of a narrow-mindedness in the world of literature. It wasn't until later on that she discovered these African writers, Chinua Achebe being one of those famous ones. She read his Things Fall Apart, which we will soon read. And this introduced her towards her own culture, going ahead and doing pretty much a lot of things towards her brain and starting to make her write stuff in terms of her own home culture. Later, at her Catholic confirmation, she literally changed her English name legally and technically spiritually towards Amanda. Which makes more sense in my opinion, mainly because take out the Chim and you get Amanda. I might even call her Amanda later, but for now, I'm just gonna call her Chimamanda. Yeah, Chimamanda. Speaking of writing, she was later admitted towards the University of Nigeria, as I mentioned earlier, where she started to learn the studying medicine and botany and pharmacy for about 1.5 years. She studied there for about 1.5 years before later on getting her alma degrees at other universities, one of the most notable ones being Yale University. And that's the only one I could remember. So Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie later started to go ahead and enter the writing profession. Later, in 2003, after researching to go ahead and write her first novel, she was able to create this thing called Purple Hibiscus. Which I'm only making this a biography video, mainly because I am going to be reading Purple Hibiscus, and for some reason I got the red edition and not the purple edition, as contradictory as that may be. This book led to her worldwide critical acclaim and became one of the primary places that she became her success of. It was translated into 40 different languages, apparently. Later on, with this success on Rind, she went ahead and wrote Americana, which won the New York Times Book Review Best Books of the 21st Century. It's a national bestseller. She wrote this while she was in America, and then she got this published in America too. And this was in 2013, another one of her notable works. Later, after with this success on Drive, she became a very big activist, going ahead and getting activism in the roles of gay rights, women's rights, and she was a feminist and an activist and everything else too. In fact, I believe there was this one TED Talk saying that why we should all be feminists or something. Speaking of TED Talks, because of this, she became one of the most influential and most outspoken, in a good way, kind of people who go ahead and activate for became activists towards those big issues throughout the world. Here's a really good quote that I found from one of her TED Talks. The problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. That's true. Like, let me give you an example of all this. The stereotype of all Asians good at the math. Now, generally, unfortunately, this is true, but that's very good. Like, it's a good stereotype, some people might say. But unfortunately, because of this, lots of people assume that as soon as you see an Asian, you think, oh, must be good at math. In fact, one of the Family Guy episodes go ahead and takes a little play on this, where Peter Griffin, taking the SAT, I believe, went ahead and was taking the math portion, and all the other people in the room were a bunch of Asian kids taking the math exam and solving and solving and solving. And Peter Griffin's all like there, he's sitting there and he's all like, I need my calculator or something like that. And he picks something up, and apparently it turns out to be an Asian kid. And he puts him on the table, shows him the test, and he's all like, pokes him and says, come on, do math. South Park itself literally has an entire episode dedicated towards these stereotypes and other racial slurs. But that's just, I'm not going to get into that later. But the truth is, yes, these stereotypes, it's not that they're not untrue. In fact, most of the time, they are actually pretty true. Like, Canadians are very nice, Asians are good at math, and other stereotypes that I will not mention because they're derogatory, but they are technically incomplete. There's a whole bunch of other people here that are really the outliers in this. And when it's more than hundreds and hundreds of people out of this entire race that are like the outliers of the stereotype, and that means that there are more people too. Lots of people can go ahead and be different as well too. Lots of people can go ahead and become weird and different from others, but they are essentially the same inside. Personality wise they might be the same, and action wise they might be the same. I might not look exactly like you, but I might talk like you. I might go ahead, I can probably imitate you. Like, come on mate, you can go ahead and talk to me, mate. I could probably go ahead and do the rest of the video in this accent, mate, and I could probably go on and saying mate and all the time, but that's another stereotype, so I won't go ahead and perpetrate it. But let's keep going on with this story. So, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie went ahead and kept on writing. Eventually, she writes this memoir, Notes on Grief, which was like an expansion of her New York Times essay that she wrote about the memoirs on her father, who died during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Rest in peace, Mr. Adichie. And she eventually turned it into this book, Notes on Grief, which became more of like her own personal memoir. This was pretty recent. It's one of her recent works. It's 2021 that she wrote this. And there's not much else that I would really talk about anyway here. I've talked about all the key points of her life. If I missed anything, and I definitely missed a lot of stuff, please tell me in the comments below. I hope to see you guys soon in the next episode, because until next time, Shihana, peace. Bye-bye.